Welcome to the Hope for Healing Network. This is Cecily Henderson. Thank you for joining us in the safe space today. I am super excited to introduce my next guests. They are doing some incredible work, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about them before we begin. I'd like to introduce Dr. Pryor and Laura Bowden. Dr. Pryor is a board certified plastic surgeon. He has many other professional associations and certifications, and he became involved in breast implant illness in 2018. An advocate, Laura Bowden, she was on Oprah Winfrey's show. She's spoken out against the FDA about breast implants. She also hosted an event for surgeons to learn more about breast implant illness, and Dr. Pryor was the only one that showed up. So currently, Dr. Pryor and Laura have worked to advocate for breast implant illness in Illinois, and they're doing some amazing work, devoting their time, their study, their research to breast implant illness. They've also conducted and received grants for research with medical students from the University of Illinois. And Dr. Pryor is the founder of BII Centers of Excellence, which is dedicated. It's a dedicated resource for patients to be able to find trusted surgeons who understand breast implant illness. So welcome, Dr. Pryor and Laura. I'm so excited to have you here to talk about this topic, which is so needed. And you both are heroes in my book. So welcome.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And it's great to be part of such a impactful community like yours and being able to spread awareness about breast implant illness to, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that, potentially could use some awareness and help.
Thank you. Yeah, this is not a topic that is talked about very often. And a lot of women don't realize how much it can affect us because it's very complex. So being able to find surgeons or experts such as yourself and Laura to talk about this so women can have a good direction. I would love for you, if you wouldn't mind, just talk, please tell us a little bit about what you're doing to help women as far as, explanting. We're going to go into it a little bit more in depth, but if you wouldn't mind telling the viewers just what you're doing there in Illinois.
Sure, happy to. So like you said, I'm a board certified plastic surgeon. And so I started, really focusing in on the breast implant illness space, like you said, in 2018, when I met Laura, who herself has been an advocate in the explant community for over 30 years and has made numerous media appearances, including Oprah, like you said, commonly known as Oprah Laura. And we just had this immediate kind of spiritual connection, and we knew that we were destined to work together to bring awareness to women that were suffering from BII, which, not that long ago in 2018, only 7 years ago, I would say we were at a fraction of the awareness that exists today. And I think a lot of that is from advocacy and social media, which didn't exist, as you know, surprisingly hard to believe in this day and age. But, go back 10 years, people were not getting their information from social media. So now, a lot of it is women empowering other women. That's really what we like to see, because the success stories speak for themselves. The patients' journeys and testimonials speak for themselves. And so as we've continued to work together, Laura and I, over the last 7 years, we've built up, what we call now this Breast Implant Illness Centers of Excellence, which is both in Illinois and in Florida. So I initially built up the Illinois-based center, and now we have other very high qualified, very, very prestigious surgeons working with us, doing our explant technique and process to be able to provide relief to the most amount of women. I'm also building up a similar practice down in Palm Beach in Florida, because there's just so much demand for women that need to be explanted. And even in this day and age, there's not that many resources as far as surgeons goes to help these women with breast implant illness. And, that's a whole nother topic we can talk about. But, we have just seen over the last 7 years so much demand and so much help that we're able to provide, for these women by doing their explant surgery. So, in building this center of excellence, for me, obviously it started, I'm a plastic surgeon. I've been trained in breast reconstruction. So using my technical skills to help patients directly in surgery and help them recover from breast implant illness. And as this has grown and evolved, we're looking at this much more holistically now, and also trying to include, the education of the next generation of medical students, other surgeons that we can potentially partner with that will help grow awareness and align our visions for really helping to improve the lives of as many women as possible across the country and across the globe through awareness and visibility into breast implant illness. And I think, in this day and age, especially with some of the administrative changes that are happening, we just heard about the dye ban, very recently from the FDA. I think this is, right on the heels of an important topic about making America healthy again, and making our products safe, and making sure that patients are getting appropriate informed consent, which is another big pillar of what we're looking to do with our advocacy, because the reality is breast implants probably aren't going away. And, there's some patients that like to have implants. And, we support women that want to get implants as long as it's done with an appropriate informed consent process. So, those are all things that, as we kind of look at the breast implant illness, explant space more broadly, we're looking to, add value and hopefully bring together like-minded professionals like yourself, advocates like Laura, surgeons like myself, that all have this kind of mission and vision to, not to sound cliche, but, make America healthy, and, eliminate things that are potentially leading to people not feeling their best, not leading their best lives. And a lot of these causes for, not feeling well, whether it's additives in our food or other, devices, potentially can be eliminated and help patients recover from a lot of these chronic illnesses.
Wow, you brought up some really great points, and I
A
really
lot to unpack there, but
yeah, there are so many good points. And for viewers, a lot of people in this group don't really understand breast implant illness, and it's very complex. And so, please tell me, what do you see in a lot of your patients, some of the symptoms that you see in the majority?
You want to take that, Laura? I'm happy to go into that, but okay. So, the symptoms we see in patients with breast implant illness can be challenging because they're very nonspecific. And so I've actually gone through a health crisis myself in the last year. And, if I had breast implants, I would have thought I had breast implant illness. And it's a lot of the same types of symptoms that we see in other chronic inflammatory conditions. So it's really hard to pinpoint sometimes, cause and effect. But symptoms such as fatigue, brain fog, hair loss, rashes, joint pain, weight changes, neurologic symptoms, symptoms of autoimmune conditions, neurologic conditions. I mean, we've got a symptom sheet with over 50 symptoms, and there's even more that women identify at the time of their consult. And so it's very nonspecific, but it's really more of a clinical diagnosis that we can look at the constellation of symptoms, understand what the patient's experiencing, set appropriate expectations with them about what breast implant illness is and whether or not we think we can help them, and setting expectations about what they can expect after surgery. So the symptoms are very diverse. They are the result from both silicone and saline implants. That's a common misperception. I was just speaking on a webinar earlier today that the implants do not have to be ruptured. You can have an entirely intact implant. You do not need to have capsular contracture. The implants do not have to be in for a long period of time. It all depends on everybody's individual predispositions and environmental factors. But, it can be, Laura went down, like she likes to say, within 3 months. We've had other patients that develop symptoms over years and decades. So it's really highly variable. It's tough to really pinpoint, like I said, cause and effect. But we see a huge constellation of symptoms that are pretty variable among different types of patients. And very commonly, they're told, from having gone from doctor to doctor. I'm sure a lot of your audience can relate to that. They go to their primary doctor, they go to the rheumatologist, they go to their endocrinologist, they go to interventional radiology, they get diagnostic tests, they get labs. Generally these are pretty negative. They don't find a whole lot of information, and they're told they're either, best case, they're depressed, or they're anxious, or they're stressed out, or they're menopausal, or they're getting old.
Or they're crazy.
Sometimes they're just told straight up, go see a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
We can't help you. This isn't a medical issue. You've got, a problem in your head. And like the women, when they come in and see us for the first time and they've been, I hate to use the term, gaslit, so many times from other professionals that they start believing themselves that they're crazy and it's all in their head. And we validate their concerns, we validate their symptoms, we tell the patients, you know, we've seen dozens and hundreds of patients like you that have all these symptoms that get better after explant surgery. So you're not crazy, you're not menopausal, you're not just a anxious and depressed and need to go on an SSRI. I mean, that's the furthest from the way that we're trying to support our patients. And they just many times burst into tears right in the office.
Yeah, usually by the time these women have gotten to me, they've done better research than the FBI. They have already went conventional, just like Dr. Pryor said, here's another pill. And then they go holistic. And we're going to go down that path a little bit more. They go holistic. I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to clean up my gut. And then it gets to the point they're doing everything and they're barely keeping their head above water. They're in fight or flight. So by the time I get a phone call from a woman, she's already knows that in her God-given gut, something's just not right. There's no convincing. I always tease, and I'm just going to say that I always say, I suck at sales. I don't need to sell anything. By the time these beautiful souls get to us, they just need a lifeline. And somebody realized that we believe them and they're not alone. And just those, here she goes. She just started crying.
Dr. Pryor and the Crier.
So just those words, because of another woman that believed me, I understand the importance of being on that other line. So, if we can support these women and make them realize that they're not crazy and it's something that they already know in their God-given gut, that something's not right, they know they're in a safe place. So here goes Laura. It didn't take long. The first time she starts talking, she starts crying. But
no, but you're passionate about it. That's why it comes out. And Laura's a survivor, and she relates to these women. And I do as much as I can as a male that doesn't have breast implants, but especially now, like I said, that I've been through my own health crisis, which you don't expect. And as a knowledgeable physician with resources, it was hard enough for me to navigate my way out of it. But it's a lot of the same types of things that these patients experience, so I can understand firsthand the frustration that they're going through.
And this is why I was excited to bring you on, because you both have such big hearts. And I was telling you before that you're heroes in my book because you are advocating for women. I remember, I had breast implant illness for 14 years. 7 of those years I was paralyzed because I had a breast implant rupture that passed the blood-brain barrier, caused me to basically my nervous system to shut down. And I was passed from doctor to doctor. It was the worst experience. But having somebody like you, like both of you, to step up saying, hey, it's not in your head. There is something going on. That means so much. And so I can't tell you how grateful I am, because there's so many women out there that are suffering. They don't know that they're having this foreign body reaction. They don't realize that something is going on, and they're being, like you said, told that there's nothing wrong. They're being gaslighted. And so it is refreshing to have people like yourselves doing what you're doing, because it's much needed. And that's why I'm so excited.
We tell our patients, doing the explant surgery is both diagnostic and therapeutic. There's not a individual test that I can say, let's test and see if you've got BII before surgery. So it's all about appropriate informed consent, setting expectations, and then actually taking the implants out. It's diagnostic in the sense that if patients get better, we can definitely trace it back to the source, which was their implants. And it's also therapeutic in that now the implants are out and their body can recover and heal. And like Laura said, we don't need to sell, because the amazing transformations that we see in patients that get explanted sells itself. I didn't set out to build a BII Centers of Excellence. I wasn't scheming one day and said, I want to build this great Centers of Excellence because, that's going to be my business model. But patient after patient after patient after patient that you see get better after surgery, then you're like, wow, there's really something here that is just we're scratching the surface. We need to do more. We need to dig deeper. There's like a huge opportunity here to help a lot of people. And, they're just not getting the information and the resources they need to get better.
Well, let's talk about the BII Centers of Excellence. because as a functional medicine practitioner, and I've gone over some of what you're doing, you do integrate some of that holistic. I love that you put that information out there, and combining the two. I think whole body wellness is integrative, where you combine that, the medical professional plus the holistic professionals, and it creates that whole body wellness for people. And so please, let's talk about what you're doing at the BII Centers of Excellence.
Sure. So, great timing. We've got a recent partnership with a program called the PAMPA program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but they do a great job with detoxification through a pretty regimented supplementation process, as well as, virtual coaching and a whole educational platform that they use to identify the underlying root causes, treat, the appropriate cellular inflammation, and then take you through the entire process over a course of 5+ months to make sure that, in addition to explanting, which is obviously the cornerstone, removing the source, as Dr. Pampa puts it, the first R in his 5 R's, you got to remove the source. We also need to do all the things possible to try to maximize recovery from breast implant illness beyond just doing the surgery. So, in our experience, having started this over 7 years ago, we saw patients get better. That's not debatable. I mean, we've seen that patient after patient, hundreds of patients, but there are patients that, continue to have symptoms or don't get complete resolution of symptoms or get recurrent symptoms after being explanted. So we agree with you that we think an entire, protocol that addresses the holistic wellness of the patient, both, regarding the surgery, but also pre and post-surgical to maximize their recovery. And so, interestingly, I went through the PAMPA program myself, so I'm a patient of theirs. And that's how I got introduced to their program. And as soon as I did, I told Laura, I'm like, this is like an amazing, not only is it an amazing program for anybody with chronic inflammation, because obviously there can be a lot of different types of sources for that. And I won't bore your audience with all of the, scientific background that goes into kind of understanding cellular inflammation. But, more importantly, we could apply that to our BII patients very easily, because, the way that the Dr. Pampa program puts it is, we're basically all byproducts of emotional, chemical, and physical stressors in our body. And so I would kind of categorize these implants as a physical and chemical stressor that causes exacerbation in predisposed individuals for cellular inflammation that they're unable to detoxify, and they go down this pathway of chronic inflammation, which ultimately leads to symptoms and chronic disease. So we see the real importance of partnering both the surgical improvement with a non-surgical detoxification program. In the PAMPA program in particular, it's done primarily through supplementations and education, but then there's also a lot of other things that we like to do, more holistic approaches that I do personally that I recommend for my patients to maximize their recovery. So things that I do like hot exposure, cold exposure, infrared light, infrared sauna. I mean, these are all more progressive detoxification techniques that nowadays people are using to try to, increase their mitochondrial activity, increase their longevity, reduce inflammation, heal the gut. It all kind of works hand in hand. So, like it did for me over a course of 6 months, I was very diligent. I did everything I could to, clean up my diet, clean up my stressors, clean up, any other factors that were contributing to systemic inflammation, alcohol, other toxins, fake food. And, it worked for me, and it can work for patients with BII.
Another one, just to backtrack a little bit, is lymphatic massages.
Mhm.
Open up those pathways. Our bodies are beautiful machines as long as, we have them working properly. So it's something probably on one of the top of my lists. I always suggest that somebody gets their lymphatic massage by somebody certified.
Yeah, I agree. And all those things, that all the modalities that you're talking about, that it's very complex. The breast implant illness is very complex. And so being able to work with somebody and have those protocols in place, because it's chronic inflammation. When you're exposed to a foreign body reaction, those mast cells, you've got the chronic inflammation, and I'm not going to go into, but your whole body is reacting. It's how do you bring that down? How do you bring that response down? And that has been my issue, even working with women that have breast implant illness, is how to get that chronic inflammation down. So I love what you're doing because you are offering, answers for women, not just, yes, because it's important to explant properly. And I know that you understand the importance of proper explantation, which we need more surgeons like you, Dr. Pryor. And then being able, what can you do afterwards? Because a lot of women are left.
You can kind of touch on that proper explant.
Yeah, we can talk about proper explant. I just want to kind of circle back on the detox though too, because to kind of paraphrase Dr. Pompa's three-legged stool, these are what contribute to cellular inflammation. So one leg of the stool is your genetics, your DNA. Obviously, some people are predisposed, certain ways based on their genetics. Then you've got the microbiome in gut, which obviously I think probably a lot of your audience is into. That's not something that I was taught in medical school, but I think it's, definitely something that if you're up to speed on what's happening with the most progressive research nowadays, people are looking at, the microbiome as the real source of health in the body, both for neurologic function, for immune function. So, if you don't get those right, you're not going to be able to detox from breast implants or from anything else for that matter. And then finally, the three stressors that I talked about, to paraphrase Dr. Pompa's program, emotional stressors, physical stressors, chemical stressors. I would put this under the category of chemical stressors, but, also making sure that you're doing things to make sure that you're reducing your emotional stress. You have good connections, you're involved in your community, you're giving back, you're contributing. All these things lower our stress levels, and they help us as well as help somebody else. And so that's, really the best way that you can kind of lower those levels in your body to reduce this chronic inflammation, which turns on genes, which disrupts the microbiome. It all kind of works together in the wrong way to lead to symptoms of breast implant illness. And so to kind of move forward to Laura's point about, performing a proper explant surgery, our goal as surgeons is to remove the cause. And obviously the cause is at least in part related to the implants. We know that patients don't have breast implant illness, they get breast implants, they get symptoms. So that's kind of the cause and effect. What's pretty controversial nowadays is what's the right way to remove implants so that you can maximize chances of the patients getting better and recovering. And, maybe before I go into a real technical explanation, maybe Laura, you want to touch on that, briefly?
Yeah, about the scar capsule.
Yeah.
So what happens, and I know we're looking at an audience that, is not familiar, so this is all new to them. So when an implant is put in our body forms a scar capsule around it. It's a beautiful thing that it does. I always say that scar capsule is your best friend until it's not. So what happens is, Dr. Pryor had mentioned that all silicone implants gel bleed 24 hours after they're put in our body. The majority of implants we take out are not ruptured, that we take out. They look like the day they were put in. In our brain, we think that they have to be ruptured, or, it's like, well, how can I be sick from them if they're not ruptured? So that's really important to understand. So immediately our body sees it as foreign. The chemicals can trigger an autoimmune reaction. As Dr. Pryor had mentioned, within 4 months, I was taken down. So the scar capsule. So when these implants are removed, it's very important to make sure that the scar capsule is around the implant. It comes out as a whole. The best explanation is, let's picture an egg. That capsule, the outside of the capsule is the outside of the egg. So we want to make sure that all the toxins are removed. So and this is where it becomes meticulous. 100% these implants are attached to the rib cage. And that's where there's a lot of conversations. It's too risky. Some surgeons are like, this is going to cause a pneumothorax, and there's fear involved. In the wrong hands, it could be too risky, as long as it's a surgeon that understands and has the meticulous hand to remove these properly. And that's why it's so important to go to a surgeon that believes in BII and does this routinely. So that's super important.
Yeah. So I was going to say that's all right. Kind of just backing up a little bit. So to kind of Laura's point, she touched on, we want to take the implants out. We want to take it out altogether. So that's called a total capsulectomy. Mm-hmm. Kind of even beyond that, we want to do what's called en bloc capsulectomy. That's a term that is rooted in oncologic surgery and cancer surgery, where you're taking out the tissue altogether so it's not contaminating anything else in the body. So that's really how we're taking the implant and the capsule out together. So it all comes out. So a en bloc capsulectomy is a total capsulectomy, but a total capsulectomy is not an en bloc, if that makes sense. So we want to make sure that everything's coming out together. One, because if there is a rupture or a silent rupture, which is not uncommon, especially with silicone implants, patients don't always get, MRIs before explant surgery, and even the MRIs are not entirely 100% sensitive for picking up silent ruptures. So you could potentially have a patient that has a silent rupture. You go in and just take the implant out, and now you've got silicone contents throughout the chest cavity. And, Laura can tell you a personal story of a patient of hers that's still debilitated and suffering because of that type of explant surgery. So that in and of itself, in my opinion, is sufficient justification to always take out all of the capsule along with the implant. But kind of beyond that, and I'm involved in groups that, talk about, the most important, popular, progressive concepts and, thought leaders around the world, talking about what's the right way to do capsulectomy and en bloc surgery and understanding the science behind it. And all of these thought leaders agree that, there's actually chemicals in the capsules. So while the capsules start just as, like Laura said, your body's attempt to kind of wall off this foreign invader, over time, there's actually chemicals and inflammatory cells that leak into the capsule. So not to mention, not to scare your audience, but I mean, I think as they probably know, there's also potentially hidden cancers in these capsules that's been well documented: ALCL, anaplastic large cell lymphoma, as well as others, squamous cells and others. So, it doesn't make any sense to me to be leaving behind capsules that potentially could be harboring not only inflammatory cells, toxic chemicals, potentially occult cancers, only to be diagnosed down the road once, they have a sufficient time to proliferate and potentially spread. So, for all those reasons, we want to make sure we take out all of that toxic tissue along with the implant. And so it has to be done by somebody with experience. Obviously, everything's always a risk-benefit ratio. We kind of discuss that with the patient and talk about the risks, benefits, and alternatives to treatment and doing a proper explant surgery. But it's definitely something that is still somewhat controversial because there's not, that many explant surgeons like myself that fully support what we're doing in the explant community. And, like I said, the proof is in the pudding because we've seen patients have a proper explant surgery and get better. We've also seen patients have the wrong surgery performed, capsules left behind, and recurrent symptoms where we'd have to go back and actually take the capsules out, doing like a completion capsulectomy, and then the patients go on to recover. So, to me, that's very indicative that, we're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Dr. Pryor kind of touched on a little bit of a personal story that I have. I have a very, very close friend, very close friend. She was an explant patient, same thing. She had been to a surgeon that didn't take her implants out properly, and she had a rupture. So the damage had already been done by the time we got to her, and she has silicone. And again, it is the reality of BII. We have to talk about it. It's like the elephant in the living room. So she is still suffering. We have done testing on her tissue, and she has silicone in every tissue of her body.
But she had spillage of the silicone
silicone is
in
silicone.
the chest cavity.
Yeah, that the capsules were not removed. It was not removed properly. Another set was put back in her. We took that set out. Unfortunately, the damage was already done. So she's basically better in 23 hours a day, and she's doing everything she can to get better. But we really don't have a lot of answers.
And we've documented silicone migration.
Yeah.
In her specifically in her skin. We've sent that to labs overseas.
Dr. Henry Diekman.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're familiar with him. He actually did the study. He actually did a study on her. And it was identified as silicone in her tissues. It literally comes out of her skin. Wow. So the importance of having these surgeries done properly, I actually tell patients that I would rather, and I know this sounds far off, I would rather you have those capsules around that implant until you can afford to get them out than to have them taken out not properly. There's no do-overs with this. So do your research, beg, borrow, sell, do anything that you can. But that capsule is your best friend, and it's important to do your research.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for talking about this very, very important topic, because I tell my clients, yes, get it done right the first time. Get that capsule out. So you gave such a perfect explanation, Laura, for what a capsule is. And Dr. Pryor, I have worked with a lot of clients that have had like 2 and 3 surgeries to get their capsule out because it was not done properly. If you can think about having 3 surgeries on a body that's already weak, or the financial
Physical
responsibility.
stressor. Yeah, surgery is a stressor. I mean, it just exacerbates, the symptoms to begin with. So yeah, we don't want to do more than we have to do. We just want to get the patients well.
Yeah. So I just got, I think this is really important. It's funny how God works. I just got off a call with a past patient. And I've had it happen a couple times that they got their implants out properly, they got better, and then they forgot that they were sick, and they're like, I'm going to reimplant. I'm gonna
Yeah.
right. And I
Yeah.
literally just got off the phone, and she's horrified. She's upset with herself. She got reimplanted a year ago, and she's fallen back into BII.
I've had patients that have had that too.
Yeah. So what does that tell you? And and it's more than one. And they said, I should have known better. And I'm like, you know what? That's okay. You need to move on. And we definitely know now. She's, they're like,
Yeah,
it's
they're
real.
like, maybe it wasn't
Maybe
the
it wasn't the
maybe
issue.
it wasn't the implants.
Maybe I'm gonna get a better
maybe
set
it was
with
something
it.
else. Maybe they're newer now. Maybe they're better.
Yeah.
I was probably just tired or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. That wasn't it. So, that happens often too. So, cause and effect and diagnosis of exclusion. We always say we don't have any crystal ball. We cannot tell you 150% that you're sick from your breast implants. What we can say is that we watch these women get better when we remove them. Now, with that being said, we touched a little bit on silicone and saline, right? BII does not discriminate. From our experience, we do see, and never to discourage anyone to ever take your implants out, we do see the detoxification struggle more with our saline patients and silicone patients. Our saline patients have a double whammy. They have a silicone shell and they have a faulty valve. It's been known for decades. Because of that faulty valve, you have bacteria in, bacteria out. So they're dealing more with systemic. We see a lot more, and I don't mean this as mental, a lot more mental thoughts, neurological.
Yeah.
I may even throw it out there, suicidal thoughts. It's just not them. And we do see their detoxification road just a little bit different, a lot of gut issues. What happens when we take these saline implants and we put them in body temperature? They're a petri dish. So if we have bacteria in, bacteria out, although majority of saline implants we take out, they look like the day they were put in. Although a lot of times we see a little bit of mold where that valve is, right? So because that seal is not sealed, we've got a lot of interaction going on there. So never to say there's no hope for the saline patients, because there is. We just see a lot more neurological, and they really have to clean up their gut-brain connection, mind, body, soul.
Wow. Yeah, that's what a
It all
great
works together. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great points. We actually have somebody asking a question. Lyneth asked a question. Let me pull that up really quick. And I want to address this because I think a lot of women have this particular question. And it's basically, do you have a test to find out if you have silicone migration?
Oh, that's a good question. Silicone migration. So you could potentially get like an MRI, because I have seen them read silicone granulomas and lymphadenopathy, axillary in particular, on patients that have had silicone migration from the breast implant to the axillary lymph nodes, which would be the first route of removal. But, it's probably not practical for most patients to be getting MRIs and doing that kind of thing. So I would say it's probably more of a clinical diagnosis. So if I had somebody coming in, with breast implant illness and they had, what's called axillary lymphadenopathy or cervical or some other lymphadenopathy, that would need to be worked up separately. But I would not be surprised if they did get some imaging study that showed silicone migration that way. There's not other than going through like a needle, image guided needle biopsy or something really extensive, there's not really a great way to know that other than to, take the implants out and see how the patients, do after surgery. Interestingly, there's not like a diagnostic test that we perform to say, you've got breast implant illness. But the interesting thing is, all of the tests that a lot of patients get, myself included when I was sick, markers of inflammation throughout the body, which are not, very sensitive. They met, CRP, C-reactive protein, SED rate, those types of things, many times are very normal, and so, patients are kind of stuck like, well, I know it. And again, me too. It was like, I know I don't feel well. Like, I don't feel right. I don't feel like myself, but my tests are all coming back negative. Now, the interesting thing that the PAMPA program does is they test for a chemical byproduct of cellular inflammation called malondialdehyde. and it's a urine test, and they do that at the onset of their program. And when I started, I had the most inflammation you can have, a 7 out of 7. It's, it's just a urine test. The ingredients react. It turns a certain color. I think mine was purple, and purple's bad. And so, Dr. Pompa always says he likes to keep his cellular inflammation at like a 2 or a 3. We're never going to get rid of all of it, but you just don't want to be, on one end of the spectrum. And so that's the kind of thing that's very reproducible. And you could check it again as you continue to detoxify from explant surgery or from, the medical detoxification we've talked about. And just watch your body's cellular inflammation can continue to improve over time.
Well, thank you for bringing up that point of you're going to have these test results. Like I had before, I was feeling like something was wrong. I went to my doctor. I did all the tests. I did a CT scan. I did a 3D mammogram. I said, something's wrong. And everything came out normal. It was very frustrating. And so there's really not, other than a BMRI, right, a breast MRI that's going to show, and then of course the lymph nodes, it's not going to really show that silicone migration because we don't have those tests available yet, not here in the US anyway. So I appreciate you.
We have some patients come in. I mean, they've got a stack of medical records like that. They've had MRIs and CTs and neurologists and rheumatologists and endocrinologists, and they're all going like this. You need to see your rheumatologist. You need to see your endocrinologist. You need to see your cardiologist. You need to see your, whatever. Pick a specialty, infectious disease, and kind of round and round in a circle, and finally they somehow discover breast implant illness, and then maybe months or years later they get better.
Yeah, and how they discover it? Social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally women saving women. I want to get back to a really important part about those scar capsules, okay, and about mammograms. We continue to see, I am not anti-imaging at all. We continue to see that women know that their implants were ruptured at their mammogram. They know it. So MRIs are great. Thermograms are great.
And we can use that again as a therapeutic tool.
Yes,
we
exactly.
With thermogram.
Yeah. So this scar capsule, this is really important. A capsule contracture. When a woman says, my implant's hard, it's not that their implant is hard, it's the scar capsule that's trying to protect the implant. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? When that scar capsule causes a capsule contracture, which is a hardening around the implant, it causes a fold in the implant. Okay. And what that fold does with time, it's like taking a hanger. This is your analogy, taking a hanger and bending it back and forth and back and forth.
Oh yeah. I made that up.
You did make that up. And I use it all the time. Thank you. So many times where we see a silent rupture, because it's like a box of chocolates. I say that all the time too. That's
for us.
Yeah, there you go. We just never know until that capsule's removed, put on the table, and we open that implant. So when that scar capsule is squeezing that implant, and with time, with life, right? Movement, that fold in that capsule causes a breakdown of the shell. So we'll see that fold through the capsule sometimes. And when we take the capsule off, there's that rupture. There's that silent rupture where that capsule was squeezing. So when a patient says to me, I have my implant is so hard, without causing fear, why is it so hard? Is it because there's a rupture and that capsule's trying to protect? Or is that your body's so angry with this toxin, these toxin bags in you, that it keeps trying to squeeze that implant, which causes the fold? So it could be two folds, no pun intended. So twofold. So those capsule contractures, and when a patient says, I've just got this pain in my shoulder, my arm, 100% those capsules are attached to the rib cage. The one thing I can say is 150% when those implants are removed properly with that scar capsule around attached off that rib cage, that pain goes away. It literally atrophies. It changes their posture. It changes their breathing. There's that shortness of breath. In surgery, a patient will look at me and say, I can take a big breath.
After surgery.
After surgery. In recovery. Thanks. That's why I got you here. In recovery, they literally are like, I can take a breath again. So it shows, the damage that these capsules and these implants have on our anatomy and in our bodies.
Yeah, that's one symptom that I tell patients almost universally gets better. The shortness of breath, the heaviness of the chest, the pulling, the musculoskeletal discomfort. I mean, I don't even think of that as like a BII symptom. I think of it more as just kind of mechanical, related to the weight of the implants, the hip bone connected to the shoulder bone kind of thing. Well, not exactly. But you know what I mean?
We know.
Yeah. So it's all kind of working together. and is causing these musculoskeletal symptoms. So once you take the weight off the chest, again, no pun intended, patients notice a big and like Laura said, right in recovery, we've had patients that come out of surgery, they're like, I not only can I breathe better,
Like a movement act.
I feel better. I know I'm just coming out of anesthesia, but my brain fog feels better. My numbness has gone away. My tinnitus ringing in my ears is gone. Right?
Yeah.
Like right away. Like
It's a sense of clarity. The only
yeah,
way to describe
I
it.
just feel like the lights got turned on.
Yeah, the lights got turned on. It is like the cloud was taken out of their brain. And I'm
Mhm.
speaking from experience. I definitely was one of the lucky ones. Um,
That
so yeah,
sounds
we're
cool.
trying to put a lot out here. We got a lot to say.
I love it. I love it. This is great because women need to understand. They need to understand, what to look for and make sure that to do it properly, because you just don't go out there searching on Google and the first person that pulls up. This really is an important part of searching out for your health, because your health means so much. You want to do it the right way. And there is a lot of other doctors that are trying to be explant surgeons, and they just don't understand the full capacity of breast implant illness. So I really appreciate you, coming on and talking about this. And now, if you don't mind, let's talk about some of the options, because there's women and there's clients that I work with. They're saying, "Oh my gosh, Cecily, what are my options? Because I'm going to be, am I going to be disfigured? Am I, how am I going to feel more like a woman? What are the options that you offer during explant or after explant?"
So when I talk to patients prior to surgery, I break this down into like two categories. And so in my mind, the explant itself is kind of a reconstructive, medically necessary, functional surgery designed to help patients feel better. I treat it like a cancer surgery. I treat the implants and the capsules like a cancer. So, we're doing everything we can to, resect the cancer, get the implants and the capsules all out. That's kind of stage one. That's their primary focus for coming in for surgery. Now, also, we know I'm a plastic surgeon. Women got implants because they wanted to feel better about the way that they look, and they wanted to have an improved appearance of their breast. And, we're now taking that away. So we want to do it in a way that, maximizes the appearance as much as possible. But I do make it clear from the beginning that, while that's also a priority of mine, it's kind of a second goal. If, getting the patients feeling better is, goal number one. Goal number two is making sure that we can make the breast look as good as possible after surgery. And that can depend on, what the patient's expectations are, what they want, what the breasts, look like to begin with, the anatomy of the breasts. And so it's a discussion that we have with the patient. So in addition to the explant, which is almost universally, implant removal and block capsulectomy, we talk with them about options for what I would consider breast reconstruction after capsulectomy and implant removal. And that includes possibly a lift. And that would be for somebody, generally that has ptotic breasts or loose skin, that want the breast lifted back up onto the chest. Usually there's a reconstruction of the muscle at the same time, a reconstruction of the inframammary fold, which typically gets taken out or destroyed with the original breast augmentation surgery. So there's the lift. And some patients, and we can talk a little bit about this if you want, opt to do a fat transfer. That's something that I'll do in a single stage for patients that are appropriate candidates, that have realistic expectations, that, want to try to maximize the appearance of the breast as much as possible in a single stage. So we can talk about that, but just so your audience understands the options. Sometimes we do those individually, meaning explant plus lift. Sometimes we do those together, meaning explant plus lift plus fat. Sometimes we just do explant plus fat. Sometimes we just do explant. So those are probably the four primary options for patients that are looking to, restore the appearance of the breast as much as possible after explant surgery. But it's highly variable depending on, the anatomy of the breast, the patient's expectations, their tolerance for recovery, scarring, all the normal informed consent variables that we talk about with patients that are going through elective surgery.
And I mean, I do appreciate you have some options, even though the most important focus obviously is to get the patient healthy and feeling well. But there are women that have approached me and said, what are my options? Because I'm worried about this. So I do appreciate you that you have those options afterwards. I mean, I personally, I had a fat transfer during my explant surgery, which, worked out just fine and I recovered nicely. But if you can, if women don't feel like that is for them, then you have those other options, like lifts or even
Yeah.
the internal mastopexy. I had an internal mastopexy done, which was great because it did give me a little bit of a lift. And so, there are some options, and understanding that, you being able to talk to the patient about all their options, I think is great. It's a really important.
Yeah, and as you know, the more you do, typically the longer the surgery is, individual risks go up, lifting has its own risks, fat transfer has its own risks. They all have their own potential expectations that have to be set with doing those types of surgeries, scarring and shape asymmetry and fat necrosis and, expectations for improvements in size after fat transfer. So there's all kinds of additional conversations that need to be had. It's not just like, patient A gets this surgery done, patient B gets that surgery. It's, highly variable and highly customized to the patient's expectations and wishes.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I'm just so happy that you're here. And I know that we are going to be doing an event here coming up on May 3rd, which you're going to be speaking at. I'm really excited. The nonprofit organization I belong to, Integrative Hope for Healing, we are going to be doing a huge functional medicine event based on women's health. And we are going to talk about some of these topics that we are talking about today, which is, our mast cell activation, which is the immune system. We're going to be talking about toxins and biofilms, mold, everything that can go wrong with, implants, especially saline. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Laura. There's a lot of good information that's going to be, and we'll get to see you again, Dr. Pryor and Laura. You're going to be attending that as well. So I'm super
I
excited.
feel like we've just kind of scratched the surface here, and we've kind of opened up this Pandora's box, and there's, we could talk for hours about each of these little things that we've kind of just briefly covered, but there's so much good information out there, and I can't say enough about Laura. She's just so passionate and so knowledgeable. You can tell she's been doing this a long time, and she's helping a lot of patients alongside me. Really connects with the patients, and it's really something pretty remarkable with regards to her commitment to continuing to spread awareness in the explant community, which she started doing 35 years ago.
33 years ago.
33 years ago, and took a little sabbatical, and I recruited her out of sabbatical, out of retirement, and we've been working together since 2018.
That's so incredible. And I love the dynamics between the two of you. I can tell you work really well, and you're just, I don't know, you just have a light about you that works and invites women, because we need to be connected with safe medical professionals and feel safe, especially when we've been gaslighted. So I appreciate you having that, and
Well, because we know there's an answer here. We have the same vision, the same mission. We know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. We're making progress. People are becoming more knowledgeable and informed about breast implant illness through great programs like this. Obviously, there's more people talking about it on the internet, on social media,
Medical community.
even medical communities.
Little bit.
We're doing our part. We're doing research. We do education. We teach medical students, all that kind of stuff. But I think also with the administration kind of embracing a lot of the changes in healthcare, and with the new HHS secretary and stuff like that, we're going to see this continue to be something that's talked about more and more, I would expect, for many years to come.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. If somebody would like, if whatever you've said resonated with our viewers, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So the BII Centers of Excellence .com. And that's kind of our primary homepage that houses both our Chicago-based as well as our Florida-based practices. And so it's also a resource page for patients looking to get additional information if you want to consult. But obviously, if you're just looking to connect with an advocate like Laura, get additional resources, information, get pointed in the right direction, there's lots of other online resources that we can provide for you. Also, we're on social media. So BII Centers for Excellence. We have our own Facebook page. And we just like helping patients become more empowered and sharing resources and become knowledgeable so that they can make the best decision for them. Laura will talk to you at night and on weekends. She's completely selfless. So, if there's anything that people want to learn about, please feel free to send us a comment on the website or on social media. And we'll get back to you. We'll answer your questions. No commitment required. Just want to be able to spread information and awareness.
Thank you so much. We'll make sure that we put all of that information in the comments so that if anybody, they can just click that link and connect with you. And I'm telling you, Laura, when you said that you're up at night, helping those patients, that is so incredible. You can't find many people out there that are doing that. So thank you for
you
being
can't even get a call back from a doctor's office. I mean, it's unbelievable what we do here, and especially what Laura does with her commitment to these patients. It's really best in class.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, for both of you being here, and for what you're doing, because you really truly care about women's health. And that right there is, like I tell people, you're a hero in my book. So thank you again. And
we're happy to be on this crusade together. This is really enjoyable for me. I still do aesthetic surgery, but I've got a reconstructive heart and a reconstructive background and skill set. I don't know if you know this about me, but I did a pediatric craniofacial surgery fellowship. I really liked, doing surgery on children with craniofacial and facial deformities. And, this is somewhat similar. It's, like reconstructive surgery, we're really helping patients not only look better, but feel better. I mean, when we do aesthetic surgery, it's the same thing, but through the lens of appearances, but ultimately trying to get them to feel better. But, I really feel like with my involvement in the explant community, I'm really making a difference in patients' lifestyles.
Thank you so much for that information. That is amazing that you did that. And it takes a very skilled surgeon especially to work with pediatrics. And wow, thank you so much.
I've had lots of good mentors along the way.
That is important, right? That makes a big difference.
And I do want to thank Dr. Pryor for being a voice. I'm not going to get mushy. I'm not going to cry. I promise. I'm not going to look at you. It really does take a fearless leader to step out and speak this. And, he speaks it really well. And I'm excited to see him on, additional platforms to help educate.
It's important.
It is important.
It's important. And, I feel like with my, background and skill set and resources, this is probably the most impactful thing that I can be doing with my time right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Really appreciate you being here and for all that you're doing. And I just want the viewers to know, you're not alone. There's people out there that really care about you and your health and that are here to help. So please reach out, and just wishing everyone a wonderful day. And again, Dr. Pryor, Laura, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
It's been awesome. Thank you for having us so much. And thank you for all that you're doing with spreading awareness. I know we're helping a lot of people.
Absolutely. It's my honor. So